I've got to be honest, we can be shallow AF.
Yes, so shallow.
Jubilee presents Spectrum, Season 5, Episode 5, Blind People. We invited 6 blind people to see the range of their beliefs and experiences.
Hey, I'm Alicia and I'm 31. I live in Toronto currently, and I was diagnosed 10 years ago with Stargardt disease.
I'm Christine Ha. I'm in Houston, Texas, United States. I'm best known for winning MasterChef Season 3.
Hi, I'm James Raff. I'm legally blind since birth, and I'm currently in Los Angeles, California.
I'm Lucy Edwards, I'm 24 and I'm based in the United Kingdom, and I'm best known for being the first ever blind presenter on BBC Radio 1, and I'm also a YouTuber.
I'm Mario Bonds. I'm based in Maryland. I am best known from season 2 of the Glee Project and the PBS documentary Blind Love.
Hi, I'm Molly Burke. I'm 26 years old in Los Angeles, California. I have retinitis pigmentosa and I'm a YouTuber, motivational speaker, and commercial model.
The first prompt is, being blind has enhanced my other senses. Alicia,
Somewhat agree.
Christine,
Somewhat agree.
James,
Somewhat agree.
Lucy,
Disagree.
Mario,
Strongly agree.
Molly.
Agree.
A lot of commenters say, oh, are you Daredevil? And I think I just want to smash this misconception. We don't have like supersonic other senses.
Yes. The misconception that we're somehow superhuman, that drives me nuts. But I think if I leave out of my house and I've ordered an Uber, I know my driveway, right? So when I walk out of my house, I'm totally blind, but immediately my ears say, okay, there's the engine of the car. I hear the incidental click of the doors unlocking, and I instantly know where to reach out and grab the door handle. And of course, to the driver, they don't know a blind person just got in their car.
Yeah. I said somewhat agree because it's more so that I pay attention to things more. So I don't think necessarily that you get heightened senses. It's more so that you have to depend on your other 4 senses when you lose your vision.
I said I agree because I lost the majority of my vision at 14. I've been legally blind from birth. And when I lost my vision, I immediately struggled to adapt to my other senses. I really struggled with taste. I had to eliminate things like garlic, onion, spicy foods. I also struggled with smell a lot. I distinctly remember being in a restaurant and they burnt cheese. And I had to leave the restaurant. This was the same year I went blind. So for me, that was like a truly immediate heightening of my senses. But things like my hearing and my touch, I would say are more based on paying more attention.
Next prompt is, I prefer to date fellow blind people.
Ooh.
Alicia,
Disagree.
Christine,
I disagree.
James,
Disagree.
Lucy,
Disagree.
Mario,
Disagree.
Molly.
Somewhat disagree.
I've been told that I'm a pretty beautiful man, so I need to have somebody keep telling me that I still have myself together. It's important for people to know just because we are blind doesn't mean that we're automatically going to have a blind partner. We live in the freedom of love coming in whatever condition or situation it may be in.
I'm currently married to someone who is sighted. And then when I think about it, I'm like, life is easier because he can drive me around or tell me if like a certain ingredient is expired in the pantry or tell me if I have food in my teeth.
I said somewhat disagree because I don't prefer to date somebody who is or who isn't. I'm currently in a relationship with a blind person. Prior to this, my partner has only dated sighted women and I have only dated sighted men. I don't care that neither of us can drive because we can still get around. I don't care that he can't see some of the things that I can't either because we can find ways around that, like using apps like Be My Eyes. With my sighted partners in the past, there was only so much understanding they could have of my lived experience daily. Whereas every day now, I get to come home to a partner that completely understands my life experience.
Me and Ollie have a little bit of a different sort of love story. I saw him before I went blind. I went blind 2 months into our relationship. So this may sound controversial, but I feel like he lived my blindness with me. He felt all of the emotions that I felt as a 17-year-old girl, feeling alone and having this loss and grief. My sighted partner understands me as Lucy and understands me as a blind woman way deeper than I could ever find in any blind partner, just because of what we've lived through together. So we're getting married next year, so yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd love to ask a follow-up question too. People were curious, are blind people less shallow about romantic partners?
Oh,
Love this question. Love it.
I've got to be honest. We can be shallow AF.
Yes, so shallow.
One of the first things I'm going to notice is, what does your voice sound like?
Exactly.
hair is a massive thing for me. I love when Ollie has his haircut. I love his beard.
I notice the feel of nice hands the same way a sighted person would notice pretty eyes.
Smell
Yeah,
is
definitely
so
the way
big.
hands-
Oh yeah, smell.
I get the
Hands
sense of
too.
feeling.
Clone's
Yeah.
gotta be right.
You know how like girls are like, are you into arms or abs? Like I've always been like, I'm an arms girl because it's the first impression I have of a man. When he gives me sighted God, I'm like, but how's that arm hair situation? How's that arm fitness? Like what's that, like, you know, bicep like? Like I get my full scope of his, you know, his makeup.
And there have been times where, you know, the whole sighted world's like, oh, she doesn't look like she belongs with you. But I did not care because it's what I found to be attractive, both by virtue
Yeah.
of personality and what she felt like to me, and everything like that was fine.
I am as shallow as my sighted friends, it's just in different ways. I do still experience physical and sexual attraction like any sighted person would. And so yes, I do have preferences of height, of hair, of body type.
Well, I would say the opposite. Being legally blind, actually, because I've been going through the degeneration of my eye disease for the last 10 years. Like I was diagnosed when I was 21, and back then I had different preferences for what I was looking for. And now my preferences are more lifelong. Like, is this person going to stay by me as my vision degenerates? And because of that, I don't look so much at what they look like because I can't see them as well as I used to, but also because I need to know that they match me inside.
Unsolicited help makes things harder.
I would say somewhat agree.
I'm also somewhat agree.
Strongly agree.
Somewhat agree.
Somewhat agree.
Somewhat agree.
This happened the other day at the mall, and especially in a post-pandemic world, I don't necessarily want people getting up in my space, and it's hard to sort of police that as a blind person sometimes. Had a security guard just literally take hold of me. He didn't even know where I was going. Then I told him, and I'm like, I know where I am, and I just wasn't really comfortable with that scenario. And then I've had past scenarios where I've actually been literally guided into traffic. It was kind of a scary scenario, and it just all happened so fast. I really didn't know how to react.
I've been in situations where I've actually been cursed out for refusing help. I'll get the door for you. Oh no, please don't. I have it. I'll get the door for you. Oh no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I have it. I'll get the door for you. Oh no, I'm fine. Damn, I was just trying to help your blind ass.
Whoa.
It's almost like as if I robbed them of a Cub Scout moment, but it's more of a respect thing.
I totally agree with you, Maria. I've got Google Maps in my bone conducting headphones, and I'm with Olga, my guide dog. You know, I know where I'm going. There was a lady who stroked Olga as I was crossing the road. There's cars coming and you're just like, wow, like, where am I? What am I doing? Then obviously Olga's distracted. Then you're a bit off whack. And I think the motto here should be, just ask, don't grab. Just come up to me and say, you know, you look lost. I'm Sally, I'm a passerby. You know, you look like you need help. Do you need any assistance? And then that gives the autonomy back to us and to say, actually, yeah, I would really love it. Or actually, no, I don't need help right now.
So I chose somewhat agree for a different reason. Being as I don't look blind, when I look at unsolicited help, I think of it as advice. They tend to give me advice like, you know, maybe you just shouldn't work because this is too much work for you. It doesn't boost the morale. It doesn't actually help. And it actually hinders and makes me feel like you don't see me as capable and independent.
I said somewhat agree. I don't always know that I need help. So sometimes unsolicited advice or help is actually really beneficial for me. But overwhelmingly, I generally will ask for help if I do need it. We have our process. I might have to sit through 3 cycles of traffic at an intersection if I've never crossed at that intersection before, but I'm not lost. I'm just doing what I need to do to be safe and to accommodate my disability. And I think all of us like to have as much independence, as much freedom as we can have. And so sometimes interrupting us having independence and freedom can be frustrating. And it does feel like you're underestimating our ability.
I will say, though, that I appreciate it if my husband tells me my cane's about to go into dog poo or something.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, yeah, that's not fun. Unwanted perfume.
The city I live in is easily accessible for me.
Somewhat disagree.
Strongly disagree.
Somewhat disagree.
Somewhat agree.
Strongly disagree.
Somewhat disagree.
I spent many years in downtown Los Angeles, which I love. But whenever people needed me to leave downtown to go towards the beach side or go into the valley, or LA is really big and spread out, then it requires me to figure out, okay, can I combo this between the metro and Uber with the cost of, and then considering the traffic. And that's why I'm actually in the process of transitioning my life into a more accessible city at the moment.
LA is not known for having good public transit, and it's also just very expensive. I usually have to purely rely on Uber and Lyft. I've chosen to live in a very walkable area of LA, which is also very rare. We have the sidewalk braille, the nice bumps on the sidewalk. All of the crossings near me are either vibrating or tweeting. So for those reasons, yes, my little area is accessible, but LA as a whole, not quite.
Because of what Molly and James said, I'm going to flip from somewhat disagree to somewhat agree. Being that I live in Toronto, there's a lot of things that I consider blessings here, but there are things that I need that haven't been thought of because, again, a lot of times when they're trying to be accessible is still an ideology that doesn't encompass all of us. I love that when the buses come, there's audio announcements, but sometimes the drivers turn them off and I've gone on the wrong bus and gone the wrong way for half an hour and then had to wander aimlessly. And because I can't see street signs, I don't know which way I'm going.
Yeah, I'm somewhat agree as well. Where I'm from in the UK, in London, we don't have tweeting crossings, so that is so cool. We have a little cylinder at the bottom that sort of moves and spins round, so we know when to cross. But I think London overall, I'm really lucky because I have the underground. In the underground, it's all audible. Overall, black cabs are amazing. Me and the cabbies have a good old chin wag. They're ever so friendly. So if you're ever in London, definitely get in a black cab. That is so sweet.
I said strongly disagree. I live in Houston, which is very much a commuter city. There are many parts of Houston that have either very terrible sidewalks that need fixing, that are very crooked, or they're low-hanging branches. I feel like where there are a lot more pedestrians, it seems to be more accessible for those who are visually impaired, whereas these wider spread cities that depend a lot on cars get around, like LA or Houston, seems to be less accessible.
As a blind individual, I end up paying a fortune when I want to be independent. I end up paying a fortune in transportation costs. I look at it like this: at any time I want to leave the house, it costs me a coin, so to speak.
And not only is it often, more expensive to be blind because we do have to pay higher rent to live in these more accessible neighborhoods and just accessible technology and all of these extra costs in our lives, but also many blind people live in poverty due to lack of job opportunities. Yeah. So not only is it more expensive, we're lower income overall.
Yeah, the huge point, 80% of working age blind adults are unemployed, and that's the statistics that have risen steadily since the 1970s. So that's a really good point.
I am offended when blind is used as one of my descriptive characteristics.
Disagree.
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 Strongly disagree. I strongly disagree with this because I think if I was to be offended, that means I'm ashamed. And I'm not. My blindness is yes, just a piece of me, but it is a large piece of me, and it's a large piece that has informed many of the other pieces of me. So call me blind because I am. Call me short because I am. Call me pale because I am. These are just facts about me. and they don't offend me, they don't upset me. They are things that I'm proud of and that I wholeheartedly own.
I do call myself the blind cook. People do know me as the blind chef. So that I do own that because that is a huge part of who I am. But I wouldn't say I strongly disagree because I'm thinking of situations where I'm introduced at something and then people say like, oh, she's a chef. Oh, but she's also blind. Isn't that even more amazing? I don't want to be put on this other pedestal in spite of my vision loss.
You know, it's interesting because I'm with Christine that where it's a disagree. I do love it that in the bio, blindness is the last thing on the list. I'm Mario Bond's 32-year-old singer-songwriter from Maryland. And then you can add, he lost his sight to morning glory syndrome at blah, blah, blah. It's done in a respectable way.
I didn't say strongly disagree because I think being diagnosed at 21, a lot of who I am was still being a sighted person up until 21. And because of that, I have to honor that.
It's really important that we're all that out there shouting about the blind message, that we're united and we're owning it, because for ages, I didn't want to be blind. I went blind at 17 and I didn't like the word. I lost my vision and I don't know what to do and I'm grieving and there's a loss there and, what are these connotations of this word blind? It's scary, I was that girl at school that didn't want to use her cane and didn't want to own it, because there is still a lot of people out there that see the tagline blind and go, oh, and it got a lot easier when I owned my mobility aid and said, right, I am coming out as blind to the world. And in turn, I'm coming out as myself. I'm liberated, I'm free, and this is me. And it just felt like you were breathing a sigh of relief.
Being blind has affected my mental health.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Somewhat disagree.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
So, having been born legally blind, I never knew anything different. It wasn't until kids become more aware and stuff and poke out differences and really nag on those that's when I really had that whole journey of my mental health and being diagnosed with mental illnesses and stuff. But that really, I don't blame my blindness. I blame the individuals that may have really resulted in my mental health deteriorating. And it wasn't actually until so I got a surgery. It was experimental. I did regain vision for the first time and was considered just visually impaired on the mark. And that only lasted for about 2 years. And then overnight, it all just deteriorated, went back to how it was. And but I didn't find happiness until after I went blind again. I think it was just because this is how I'm supposed to experience life, because I feel like there's a greater purpose for it in my life, and I got to do something with that.
James, I appreciate what you said. I thought that was quite powerful because I hadn't thought of it like that before. Being a person who has been in several situations where I was taken advantage of, whether it was by a family member, whether it was, a teacher molesting me as a teenager, or even just more recently, whether it's kids being kids and kids trying to, kind of get over on their blind parent. Of course, I'm on it now, but all of those things, kind of bleed into one principal theme, that we are blind, and sometimes you're gonna go to those emotional corners where I resent being blind because of what people might do to weaponize my circumstance. So James, you really said something that stuck with me there.
Mario, I appreciate how you phrased all that and shared all that.
It's hard, isn't it? It's one of those things where you look back and you think, wow, why me? I guess that's what I did at the start. I was with my tub of Ben and Jerry's in my bed. Yeah, and I was that girl. I was the only girl in my family, in my friendship group. Everyone sighted, me wishing she had her sight back. And, my organ died in front of my eyes. Of course I'm going to feel low, you know what I mean?
It is a grieving process. It's definitely not just vision loss. It's a loss of losing a sense of self as well. It's a loss of having hopes and desires for a future that might not be what it is. It might be better, but it won't be what you envisioned it to be originally.
Blind people are 3 times more likely to deal with depression and anxiety. So if you are blind and you struggle with mental illness, you don't have to feel alone. we statistically are more susceptible to struggling with it. And to me, it makes sense. Ultimately, we're living in a world that isn't designed or created for us, and we're making our way, and we're doing it, and we're killing it, but it does make life in certain circumstances more difficult.
I have experienced discrimination.
Somewhat agree.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Ooh, I was the only one that said somewhat, eh?
I wonder if the difference is given we all use mobility aids.
No, actually, there's this intersectionality between living my entire life as a Black woman and being as I've only been diagnosed with this eye disease and lived with it for the last 10 years, I can see a clear difference between the discrimination of being Black versus the discrimination of being blind. When I tell people that I've gone through something or I've faced discrimination as a Black female, sometimes I'm met with doubt or kind of like pushing it to the side, or it's in your head, or it's not that bad. Whereas I feel like people meet me halfway when it comes to my vision loss. People find it admirable and kind of attach to identity as inspirational. It's a different energy and it's a different temperature, which is why I said somewhat, not strongly.
As a blind Black man, I can say that I've experienced discrimination on both fronts, unfortunately. You know, the crux of me is really the arts. I did try out for American Idol. There's several rounds of auditions you have to go through to get on these reality shows, and this is like the first level of it. I'm there at my guitar, and I sing my heart out. And then the producer, he stopped me and said, dude, normally we really don't let blind people through. And even if we do, we don't usually let them go so far because they can be so difficult to deal with during production. But man, you're so dope. I got to say yes.
Was that supposed to be a compliment?
That type of stuff really can leave you feeling unaccomplished because obviously you want to be seen for your ability. You want to be seen for the content of your character. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. And that can, you know, a bigger plug to earlier conversation we had, that can sometimes be a catalyst for a plunge into, you know, momentary depression as well.
I do feel like the bulk of the discrimination that I face is due to my guide dog. And it's only getting increasingly worse as the misuse of service dogs and the use of fake service dogs increases. I've been a guide dog user for 13 years now. And over the last 5, year over year, it gets worse and worse and worse. And I face more and more and more discrimination.
I strongly agree. When I'm entering a taxi, people see my guide dog and not the person who needs a ride. I've had someone spit at me and swear at me. And, you know, even though now I've found great taxi drivers in central London, it still does scare me.
With the job-related stuff, I've been in those interviews. Everything seems to go well. They're giving me an estimation of like when I'm going to hear back. Oh, it's going to be next Tuesday. Yeah, we even want you to maybe even head this department. And then when you start mentioning accommodations, then the conversation sort of shifts. And then next thing I know, I get an automated, decline like through email 30 days later instead of hearing back on that Tuesday.
Oftentimes people approach and, you know, want to ask to take a photo. They'll always ask my husband, like, is it okay if I take a photo with Christine? There's just things like that I think a lot of people don't think about. I feel like when someone asks somebody else if they are allowed to take a photo with me, that I'm a lesser person, that, you know, I cannot make my own independent decision.
I know it's a sighted world, but I always find it amazing that because of the preconceived notion of what they think blind people should look like, or shouldn't look like, that albeit I think it's ridiculous, that I even get things like, you know, there's no way this guy is blind, he's muscular. And it's like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Blindness is quite rare, and I think the main place that people get their opinion on what blindness must be like is through entertainment. Because I choose to put myself out there online and I don't, quote, look blind or look the way people think I'm supposed to as a disabled woman, I get a lot of she's faking it. You know, there's whole Reddit threads, there's whole blogs devoted to trying to debunk my blindness. And that's why representation is so important. And that's why videos like this one is so important to watch, to share, because we need the education to spread so that ignorance is combated with education.
If I could regain my sight with a cure, I would want to.
Strongly agree.
Somewhat agree.
Strongly disagree.
Disagree.
Strongly agree.
Disagree.
If I was to get my sight back, I would love to see the faces of the children that I've adopted. That would be amazing.
I said disagree, and my answer probably a good 4 years ago would have been the complete opposite. I'm going to have my wedding next year, and there's so much of me that wants to see Ollie's face when I'm walking down the aisle, or my mom's face, or my sister's face, or my dad's face again, because they have now faded from my memory. That does hurt me inside quite deeply, and just thinking of the milestones really in life, having kids with Ollie in the future. But I think the reason that my answer is disagree is because I have finally come to accept who I am, and the fact that I really do deeply believe now that life without sight is truly beautiful. When I embrace that, that's when I don't want my sight back. I don't need it to feel fulfilled and to feel Lucy.
I said disagree like Lucy for many of the same reasons. At the beginning of my vision loss, I dealt with a lot of anger, resentment. I threw myself pity parties, asked why me. All I wanted was my sight back. In fact, I was literally the youth ambassador for a charity whose sole purpose was to fundraise to find a cure for my disease. And along my self-acceptance and self-love journey, I realized how toxic that mindset was for me. And that's where the social model versus medical model comes in. The medical model is the idea that the answer to disability is curing it, which puts really the onus on the disabled person. We are the burden on society, and we need to change, be fixed, be healed in order to be whole or good enough or fit into society. Whereas the social model of disability says, actually, the disabled person is perfectly fine and they aren't the problem at all. The real problem is society's inaccessibility with our infrastructure in terms of, the design of our buildings and our physical space around us, but also our technology and just everything we use and interact with on a daily basis. So for all of those reasons, I don't want to cure.
So have gone through a bit of a process of trying to cure my sight back when I was about 11 years old, feeling pressure to do so in order to fit in, and it reverting back within 2 years. I was never happy during those 2 years because I wasn't doing it for me. It really didn't feel like I was myself until I was able to really embrace my blindness. 1 in 7 people in the world have some form of disability, and that may only increase as time goes on. I know for me, and the purpose that I'm here on this earth to do, it's to leave this world a more accessible and accepting place than I found it.
I answered somewhat agree. Ideally, I think I would want my vision back for maybe a couple days, just so I can watch some foreign films, see what, maybe my friends and family look like now. But then I feel like I don't necessarily want my full vision back forever, because I think I'm kind of at the halfway point in my life where I've lived half of my life with vision and half of it without. So it would be so different and difficult. And I think losing my vision put me in a position where I was forced to think outside of the box and create opportunities for myself and be more courageous. But it would be kind of cool just to see what cars look like nowadays.
I've come more into myself, and kind of like what Christine said, there's a lot about all of our characters that wouldn't have been had it not been the challenges of losing our vision. I feel like I could take the last 10 years in the character development and take that forward, whether I'm visually impaired or sighted.
Yeah, I don't think I would be the person I am today if I hadn't lost my vision. But past that, I really work hard to be the coolest blind dad ever. My kids don't miss a beat. I'm able to chase and play with my 7 and 10-year-old. I box with my teenagers. They think I'm Superman because they see me work out all the time, and we play and we do this and we do that. I'm content just being super blind Mario.
I don't know about any of you, but sometimes when I think about who I would be if I was sighted, it scares me. I'm like, I don't know who that person would be. And I'm so happy with this person that I'm like, I don't want to see who she would be. This person's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need to think about that girl.
I wholeheartedly respect everyone's journey and everyone's perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Blindness is a spectrum and we're all so unique.
This was great. You guys, this is an amazing bunch. I'm so honored to meet everybody and just to hear perspectives.
perspectives.
Yeah, such a beautiful experience. I loved hearing from you guys.
Cool.
James waves
Great
his
talking
hand.
to all of you.
It was so nice meeting all of you.
I hope we can all stay in touch.
Yeah, sounds good. It was nice talking to everyone.
Bye. I'm gonna go to bed now,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Good night. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.